So I went to Japan for 14 days solo as an introverted photographer, and today I'm going to run you guys through my entire trip, some of the really nice photography locations I went to, and hopefully this helps you out if you're interested in traveling to Japan. So the first week I stayed in Tokyo, and then the second week I stayed in Osaka. So after traveling and arriving from my flight from Melbourne to Tokyo, I ended up staying in Osaka for 7 days. On day one, I ended up doing some exploring of Osaka. I did some day street photography in Osaka, and overall just got used to the vibe of Japan. We went to Sensoji Temple during the day. Also went up towards where the bridge is as well in Osaka, and took some cool photos of the waterfront there too. In Tokyo, I found it feels very normal to be going out solo to places, which was really cool. Now, after exploring Osaka on day one during the day, of course, I ended up getting some ramen at one of the local ramen shops, and actually found this to be quite cool as well. A lot of these ramen shops are built for solo travelers too. The cool thing about these shops is that a lot of them have like a vending machine ordering system out the front. So for an introvert, this is perfect. You can just go up and press on your desired ramen, put in some yen to the machine, and then you get your ticket and you just hand the ticket over, which is actually a very efficient way to do things in comparison to having to order with a menu. So I found that to be really convenient, and I ended up going to this local ramen restaurant almost every day of the trip because I like to find places that are really cool and that I can regularly hang around rather than just trying every new possible place. So finding a ramen joint that I really liked was honestly a huge bonus in Osaka. One thing I will say about Tokyo is it's just incredibly convenient for everything. Like, you've got vending machines scattered across all of Japan that make getting drinks and coffee so easy. Just chuck in your yen to the machine, select what you want, and it comes out, and it's always super efficient and convenient, especially after spending a long day walking around Japan. Now, day two, I ended up having a pretty big crash after day one and the flight after doing like 20 or 30,000 steps during that day. So I ended up having a bit of a sleep in, so I decided to shift my routine into a typical night out routine that I tend to live and see what Osaka was like at night. So my routine on day two consisted of walking around and exploring Osaka at night, checking out Sensoji Temple at night, as well as some of the rooftops around Osaka too. There was this really cool spot at my hotel where you can get this really beautiful view of the city skyline from, I think it was the 14th floor, and you can basically see all of Osaka from there. You can see Tokyo Skytree, you can see Sensoji Temple. It was actually a pretty peaceful night overall. I did a full POV street photography session in Osaka at night as well, and obviously I've got separate videos of all these sessions on my channel if you want to check out the long form POV sessions I did. But I got some really cool shots at night in Osaka. I got a lot of Sensoji Temple, I got a lot of slow shutter shots around the city streets, and also got some cool B-roll as well. And my goal with this trip to Japan was to try and do a street photography session and explore a lot of the key areas in Tokyo. So on day three, I ended up going to Akihabara, which is the gaming central of Japan. I find for me personally, I just like exploring the streets and seeing what I can come up with in regards to creating videos and doing photography when exploring places. So after doing street photography and walking around and exploring the streets of Akihabara during the day, I waited until the sun fully set and I went back out to Akihabara at night because I wanted to see the electric city in full action at night. And this was a very cool experience because Akihabara really lights up at night. There's often some car meets as well that you'll come across in some of the side streets. I think I ran into two really cool car meets. I ran into a bunch of people going for a cruise with JDM cars. I ran into a Toyota Supra, as you'll see in these clips. And later at night, there was also a motorbike meet, and that was really cool for me to see as well. And I just ended up exploring this district of Japan and of course taking some really cool street photos, and that was day three. Now day four, I ended up making the trek from Osaka from my hotel all the way down to Shibuya. This day was focused exclusively on Shibuya. So I explored the streets of Shibuya during the day, stayed until sunset, got some really cool shots and explored a bunch of locations. We went to Miyashita Park and I got a really cool view shooting down onto the city, and I explored the streets from ground level as well. Of course, we had to see Shibuya Scramble Crossing too, as I guess all the tourists want to see. And I just spent a few hours just walking around and seeing Shibuya from my own eyes. Obviously, I've heard a lot of cool stuff about that area of Tokyo and how it is a really cool entertainment district. I also caught this really awesome sunset in the streets of Shibuya as well as I was walking around, and I was really happy with a lot of these photo locations that I came across. For me, I like just choosing a location, not having too much planned, and just sort of setting myself in that location. That's the way I like to travel. I find that it leads to some interesting experiences. You'll come across stuff that a lot of the time you wouldn't see if you had to plan out every day of your routine as a traveler. So if you're an introvert and you plan on going to Shibuya, one thing I will say about Shibuya is if it's your first time going there, it is a very overstimulating district in Japan. There's so much going on everywhere you turn. The sounds for me were completely overwhelming at times as well. It was a very huge culture shock coming from Australia, of course, but also even from Osaka, which is more of a quiet district of Japan. Shibuya, when you step in there, you just feel like you're stepping into the future. It is incredibly fascinating viewing that place, and after doing 2 street photography sessions there, one during the day at sunset and then another one at night, that was enough Shibuya for me. But it was honestly a very cool experience to see that place in person. On day 5 of my trip, I ended up going to a more peaceful location. I decided to go to a place called Ueno Park. Generally, I try and avoid the huge crowds, so Ueno Park for me is one of my favorite spots to go now. Basically because there's no people, right? You can just relax, you can just explore without having to face all these big crowds. And it's also surrounded by heaps of shrines as well, and they're all hidden sort of within the park, so check this out. Thing about Ueno Park is that there's a lot of shrines sort of scattered within the park that are hidden away for you to explore and find, and it's sort of incorporated into that modern architecture of Tokyo. And for me, having not seen a lot of that, that was super fascinating to see, but it was also incredibly peaceful, and there was a lot of places there that were perfect for introverted people to just relax and recover after spending 4 days exploring Tokyo and doing like 20,000, 30,000 steps in a day. Ueno Park was just that place where I just recovered and chilled out and got to see a lot of the more traditional parts of Japan as well, like a lot of the shrines that were located within the park, as you'll see in a lot of this footage. And day 6, I just decided to choose a random suburb in Japan. I actually went to a place called Akasaka. There was this really cool shrine that I came across that had this line and this really tall staircase of torii gates. I didn't expect to actually come across that, but I was just looking on Google Maps on my phone and I found this location, and I actually think not a lot of people knew about it because when I got there, there was very few people there. I ended up doing a full peaceful photography session in Akasaka at Hiei Shrine. Got some cool photos of the torii gates, got some really cool photos of the shrine, and then that was the day for me. I tend to like just choosing one location per day, just exploring things one day at a time and having a nice peaceful experience on my travels. It was so lucky that it started pouring rain on the last day I was in Tokyo that I got the opportunity to go out and explore the streets of Shinjuku at night after it rained. And I'm sure you know Shinjuku is a really awesome entertainment district. It's surrounded by these neon signs, and overall it was just a really cool place to explore. Trying to get to Shinjuku and that area though was really tricky because I was trying to navigate the subway systems that are underground in Tokyo, and I think I spent around 30 minutes just getting lost in Shinjuku Station trying to figure out how to get out of it. I went on a full lap trying to explore Shinjuku Station, only to find that when I actually entered back to ground level, I was on the complete opposite side to where I needed to be. After exploring Shinjuku after a rainy night and doing a really cool street photography session there, and coming back with all my equipment drenched in water, that was the last day that I had in Tokyo before going to Osaka the next day. So the remainder of that day after exploring Shinjuku was spent trying to dry out my camera equipment after it being drenched completely in water. Day 8 was spent actually traveling from Tokyo to Osaka, so trying to figure out how to get from Osaka all the way to Tokyo Station, and then to get the Shinkansen all the way from Tokyo Station down to Osaka. That took the full day, obviously checking out of my hotel, going from Osaka to Tokyo Station, then Tokyo Station all the way down to Osaka, and then checking back into a hotel in Osaka, going all the way down to Osaka by the Shinkansen. That was day 8. Day 9 on my Japan trip, I spent just getting used to the Osaka area. It was a very different vibe to Tokyo. I did actually find that a lot of people in Osaka were a lot more friendly, a lot more relaxed. In Tokyo, especially when you're navigating through a lot of the busy places and the crowds, you'll find that people are always bumping into you just because there's a sheer volume of people in Tokyo that you're also trying to navigate the city with. So getting to Osaka was a nice peaceful change. A lot of the people being super friendly there and inviting, and the area where I stayed was called Higabashi. It was the business district area of Japan, so away from the tourist areas. I found that that area was actually a nice peaceful change from where I was staying in Tokyo. At night on day 9, I actually ended up going to the Tombri in Osaka, and I wanted to explore that area and do a street photography session in that area. Unfortunately, on that day, because I just traveled from Tokyo down to Osaka with a bag full of water and my camera drenched in water, my camera stopped working.
So I was just in the middle of trying to take photos, and well, rest in peace, my A7 III. Looks like it's cooked, like fully cooked. Damn. But yeah, like look at that, you can't even do anything with it, it's just cooked.
I actually had to abandon that idea, and I went back to the hotel and started like heating up the camera with the hairdryer to try and get all the water out of it. And I thought that was it for my camera. Luckily, the next day it just randomly started working again. So don't understand Sony. Day 10 of my trip, ended up going back to the Tombri and getting some really cool street photos at blue hour, so at dusk, and then also doing a full 2-hour-long street photography session in Tombri in Osaka. That was a lot of fun. That area has just such a unique vibe about it in Japan. It felt very different to Tokyo. A lot of the side streets and the hidden laneways that you can explore in Osaka were really cool to see. Now, I tried to avoid as much of the peak areas in Osaka at the Tombri as I could, although I did kind of want to see what they were like just to experience it for myself. But if you're an introverted traveler, I'd recommend avoiding where the Running Man is, because that area was just crazy. The insane amount of volume of people that were at that one area. It was like shoulder to shoulder with other people. You're basically navigating a bunch of tourists that are taking photos, which is understandable. But for me, I wanted to get out of there as soon as I possibly could. So I ended up leaving that street and exploring some of the side streets into Tombri and doing street photography there. Day 11 of my trip, I had a nice peaceful day, bit of a rest day, so I just went out to a local restaurant, got some ramen. Yeah, just treated it as a day to disconnect, not take too many photos, not take too many videos either, just to experience that area for myself. Now, day 12, I decided to do another street photography session. Of course, that's what I'm into. I like exploring streets myself through the lens of a camera, and of course, seeing what cool compositions I can come across in the city. Ended up exploring Higabashi and doing a golden hour street photography session there. Ended up exploring down by the river, I ended up exploring a lot of the cool industrial sort of areas in Osaka, and I actually went out, and this day was a Sunday, so because it was the business districts central of Japan, I noticed that there was less people out there on a weekend, which actually proved to be a much more peaceful experience for me as a solo introverted traveler. So going to Higabashi and doing a golden hour street session, I found I got a lot of really cool minimal street shots that I actually ended up being really happy with, and that was one of the most enjoyable days of the trip I had, just being out there in a very peaceful area with great weather, exploring Higabashi and doing some cool street photography. Day 13. This day I wanted to explore Osaka Castle. This place was absolutely incredible to see in person. It's actually quite a journey to trek all the way up to the castle, but it was really satisfying walking along all the bridges that led up to the castle and then seeing it in person for the first time. Now, this is a big tourist attraction in Japan, of course, so when you arrive, expect to see a lot of big crowds. I went during the day, I think it was around 2 or 3 p.m. I arrived there and got to see the castle for myself, take photos of the outside of the castle, and then go in and explore some of the museums that were inside too. Now, I didn't actually film inside of the castle, I just decided to explore that for myself, and eventually after seeing all of the cool stuff inside the castle, I went up to the rooftop and got to see a really cool view of all of Osaka. I made a quick trip out to Nara Park to see the deers. That was quite a mission to get out. Actually, from Osaka to Nara Park, there was a local train you have to get all the way to Osaka Namba Station, and then you go from Osaka Namba Station down to Nara. Now, I didn't explore too much of Nara. I ended up only getting the opportunity to see just a brief look at one of the tourist spots at Nara Park. Saw the deer in person, and then decided to head back to Osaka at night. I wanted to explore Umeda Sky Building, and this place was incredible. I went right at blue hour at dusk, so I got to see some really cool views of the Sky Building. It has an escalator obviously that goes all the way to the top of the building, and you get to see like a 360-degree view of Osaka from the top of that building, and I was actually really wrapped with that experience. It was such a cool experience to see. One thing I will say about Umeda Sky Building is obviously it is a hotspot for people wanting to take photos like myself, so it's worth keeping in mind that that place is quite busy. Now, day 14, I spent that day doing a full travel trip. So my flight was back from Tokyo all the way back to Melbourne, so I spent that day going from Osaka, getting the Shinkansen to Tokyo, getting the local train from Tokyo all the way down to the airport, and then I headed back to Melbourne. So that was my full 14-day trip to Japan. If you want to see the full street photography POVs that I did in Japan, I've got a video from every single area that I shot in Tokyo and Osaka on my channel, so feel free to check all those videos out. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure you stay tuned for more photography and videography content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.